Let's go, let's go, let's go. What's up? It's your boy Hollywood with another episode. Fight week, finally, of a big pay-per-view that we haven't had in over a month. I swear, the UFC has been edging us for the past few months, and finally, they give us what we deserve, and that is probably the most stacked fight card of the year. I'm talking big fights from top to bottom. You got Volkan Oezdemir versus Nikita Krylov. Khabib's brother is on the card. Khabib's teammate Zubair Tukhugov versus Lucas Almeida is on the card. Caitlin Chukagian, Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady, and that's just on the prelims. I'm not even scratching the main card yet. We got Beneil Dariush versus Gamrot. That's a big fight at lightweight because, Beneil is definitely in talks for a title fight. You could make the argument that he should be fighting Charles for the vacant lightweight title this Saturday, but he's taken a pretty risky fight in fighting Gamrot, who just bursted onto the scene to the casual fans this year in his first main event against Saryukian, delivered in a big way. Now he gets a big fight, and he has a chance to make a splash and have his name in the conversation of a title fight the early part next year, should he get the victory. But, I got to do the predictions for the big fights, and it's going to be Sean O'Malley, Peter Yan, that's on the card, TJ Dalla Thrillashaw, Killashaw, Billashaw, Dillashaw versus Aljamain Sterling, bantamweight title. And then, of course, the big one, the fight we're all tuning in for, the fight we're all paying our hard-earned money for, Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev. Let's get right into it. As I said, I mentioned those other big fights. They're great. They're huge. But now it's time for the predictions and why you're watching this fight, as a UFO is flying over my house right now. Anyway, Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley, Sugar Sean O'Malley, who I finally got a new picture with. This is an interesting fight. It is a fight that I was taken aback of when it was first announced back in, I think, August it was announced. I was like, man, this is a huge, massive step up in competition for Sugar Sean O'Malley. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was fake news. I thought it was just news that these MMA pundits and people were making for fantasy, for shits and gigs. But no, this is a real fight, and this is happening. Sean O'Malley's last fight was against Pedro Munoz, and it wasn't what we expected. It was a boring fight. Let's call it what it was. It was a very boring fight. And a lot of people thought Pedro Munoz won the first round. It only lasted 2 because Sean O'Malley poked Pedro in the eye. It was ruled a no contest. And Sean O'Malley has this stigma where he fights 2 guys in the top 10 and has had 2 weird outcomes. The first one being against Marlon Chito Vera, UFC 252, 2020, smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, where he got hurt after one leg kick was landed on him by Chito. And ever since then, that fight was marred. It wasn't looked at as Chito defeating Sean O'Malley. It was looked at as, Sean O'Malley got hurt. What would have happened if he didn't get hurt? I'll tell you what happened. He would have knocked out Chito worse than he knocked out Eddie Wineland, worse than he knocked out Julian Paiva. Things like that many people ignore that happened in that Chito fight. And then this Pedro Munoz fight ended in a no contest. So we're like, okay, we don't really have any answers with Sean O'Malley. We know he could beat guys outside of the top 15, top 10. We know he could beat guys that he's supposed to beat. But how is he going to do against the guys that are ranked, the guys that have already established a name for themselves in the bantamweight division? And like I said, this isn't just anybody. This is a former champion, former interim champion, the number 1 bantamweight contender in the world. And Sean O'Malley is ranked number 13. I don't think I've ever seen a huge step up in competition like this. The only one I can really remember is Rustam Khabilov fighting Benson Henderson. And Benson Henderson absolutely dominated Rustam Khabilov. That was way back in 2014. Peter Yan, though, he's coming off a loss, a legitimate loss against Aljamain Sterling. Let's not forget that whole story where Peter Yan kneed Aljo and lost his belt that way, then defeated Corey Sandhagen and won the interim belt. Had a chance to really put an end to the saga of Aljamain Sterling, but didn't. Lost fair and square. Aljamain won 1 through 3. Peter Yan won 4 and 5. The judges got that one right for once. So Peter Yan, I wouldn't say he's fallen on tough times, but he's coming off a legitimate loss. And I didn't think this fight would happen so soon in both men's career. I thought if this fight were to happen, maybe Peter would be champion, or maybe even Sugar Sean would be champion. But now that they're not champions, it's a huge fight for both men. It's a risky fight for Peter Yan, because should he lose, what does that mean for him? That means he's way in the back of the line of the bantamweight division, while Sean O'Malley jumps the line to the point where, hey, you honestly can't deny him a shot at the title. He could fight the winner of Dillashaw and Sterling. But should Peter Yan win, it'll keep things kind of status quo. It'll mean that there's more interesting and fun matchups for Peter Yan to get back to the title. I think, and I'm not going to spoil my pick for the Dillashaw-Sterling fight, but I think if TJ Dillashaw wins and say Peter Yan wins, that's the fight to make. But let's just say he doesn't. Again, there's a lot of questions that are going to come out of this fight. If Peter Yan loses, then there is answers. And again, I think that this fight will really show us if Suga is who he says he is. I don't think the Pedro Munhoz fight did him any favors. I don't think the fights before that did him any favors. It built his name, don't get me wrong. But as far as what we know about Sugar Sean, we don't know that yet. But we're going to get that on Saturday night. Peter Yan's a monster. He will come at you full force. Bat out of hell. Straight banshee. And what does Sugar Sean do best? He counters greatly. This is a guy that will push the pace on Sugar. And he could either break Sugar, or Sugar could definitely use that in his favor and could fight his fight. I kind of see that happening. With all the trash talk that's been going on social media over the past few days, few years, few months, I think Sugar could get it done with Piotr Yan truly coming after him. That's how he's going to win. Because in the last fight, Pedro Munhoz wasn't coming after him. He wasn't engaging with Sugar Sean. Piotr Yan will come after Sugar Sean and will definitely make this a fight. And therefore, Piotr Yan could walk into something totally unexpected and that could knock him out. I see that happening. I do. I think Sugar spoils Piotr Yan's plans of getting back in the title picture. And I think he wins. Third round TKO. I don't think it's going to be easy. I actually have Sugar losing the first 2 rounds, knowing he has to get a finish. And I think he pulls the rabbit out of the hat and gets it done and tilts the bantamweight division on its head. And we're going to get a new era of greatness, a new era of excitement, a la Conor McGregor. Let's move to the title fight. First of 2, bantamweight, Dillashaw versus Sterling. Now, to catch up some of the casuals, TJ Dillashaw, former UFC bantamweight champion, 2-time UFC bantamweight champion, won his belt the first time, defeating Renan Barão back at UFC 174. Defended it twice against Joe Soto, against Renan Barão again, lost it to Dominic Cruz, won a tough fight against Rafael Assunção, and then another tough fight against John Lineker to get the title fight back against the champion at that time, Cody Garbrandt. Won the title then, defended it again against Garbrandt, and then was down to fight Henry Cejudo in a super fight of the ages for the lower weight classes. Lost that fight, then was popped for EPO, performance enhancing drugs, basically the same drug that Lance Armstrong openly said to have taken to win many of his Tour de France titles, and was suspended for 2 years. TJ Dillashaw was. Didn't fight at all in the rest of 2019, 2020. Didn't fight the rest of 2019, didn't fight at all in 2020, and came back, fought Corey Sandhagen in probably one of the best fights of the year. A lot of people thought he won. A lot of people thought he didn't win. I thought he won. I thought he eked out a close decision for being out 2 years. Coming in, fighting one of the top guys in the top 3 shows just the mindset that Dillashaw has. He has the heart of a champion. For what he did, he definitely knows how to win, and you can't ever underestimate that guy in a fight. The fights he's lost, they've come in controversial ways, close decisions. Now, Aljo, on the other hand, like I said, he went through a saga of his own. He climbed up the ranks, been in the UFC since 2014. Back when Dillashaw was getting the world title strapped around his waist, that's when Sterling was making his UFC debut. And if you really follow both of these men's careers, you just had to know that these two men were on a crossroads and were going to meet eventually down the line. How about 8 years later, we get that fight? Sterling, like I said, had a saga of his own with the Petr Yan fights, was being labeled as the Oscar winner, the all-time Oscar winner, the all-time actor for winning the title over Petr Yan via a legal knee. But he came back, silenced all doubters when he defeated Petr Yan. People say it's controversial. It was not. What do I mean the judges, what do they base around a fighter winning a round? In this order, exactly. John Anik says this before every main card: striking, grappling, aggression, and octagon control. Aljo wasn't doing the first three, but he was doing the last one. Piotr wasn't doing anything. Aljamain was doing the last one, and that's what won him that first round. And we all know the second and thirds, Aljo took him down and controlled him, equally winning the first 3 rounds. Aljamain, he's beaten some of the best. Corey Sandhagen, he had a rough fight against Marlon Moraes, but he's proven his worth, and he's proven he's a champion as well. This is probably one of the fights I'm most excited for on the main card. This was supposed to happen back on the Nate Diaz card, September 10th, but we're getting it anyway. Better late than never. This is one of those fights I do not know what to expect. And I know I say that about every other fight card and big fight that happens, but this one I truly don't. The striking advantage, I definitely have to give it to Dillashaw. I do. I really do. And you could label this as the traditional striker versus grappler matchup in this fight. Because on the ground, Aljo has it all day. His jiu-jitsu is slick. He is a cipher on the ground. Whereas Dillashaw, his ground game is okay, but is definitely not going to be winning in many jiu-jitsu tournaments in the near future. Whoever gets the fight into their world is going to win. It's just that simple. Could Aljo push the pace on TJ and negate TJ's footwork? Or can TJ use his dominant cruise footwork that won him the title the first time against Henan Brow, use his angles, use different types of tactics to really stick it to Aljo, using crisp left hooks that he's so deadly at, using footwork to get him in and out of certain situations to where Aljo has no idea what he's going on. Another big question I have is, can Aljo take TJ down? Not only can he take him down, but can he even just hold him against the fence? Not only hold him against the fence, but can he land some deadly punches that will drain the energy from TJ? Can he do that? Because no one has really done that to TJ. And the title fights that TJ has lost, or the fights that he's lost in general, no one has really been able to control him because TJ has one of the highest takedown defense rates in the division. But Aljo's wrestling is second to none. Man, TJ can wrestle his ass off, though. He really could. But the wrestling advantage would definitely have to go to Aljo. The jiu-jitsu would definitely have to go to Aljo. But if Dillashaw can keep this on the feet and keep his range, then he definitely can walk away winning the belt. And we saw in the Petr Yan fights, Aljamain tends to do a total 180. He covers up, right? Covers up, then he does this. That's what he does. And against a guy like Dillashaw, you cannot do that. You cannot do that, or else you'll be asking the referee what happened, because Dillashaw would have landed 100 punches in 30 seconds. It could be a really great fight. It could be a super boring fight. Excuse me. Don't know what happened to my voice. Oof. If it is a boring fight, that means Aljamain Sterling would win. He would win by wrestling his ass off, making TJ work from bell to bell. If TJ wins, he stays on the outside using his jab, using his kicks, pepping Aljo with shots that Aljo can't really recover from. His boxing isn't where it needs to be for a guy like TJ. I do see TJ getting the job done. I do. I really do. I like Aljo. As you can see, I got a picture with him. I like Dillashaw. I also got a picture with him. I just can't find it. But I think TJ, I think he gets it done. I do. I think he gets it done fairly early. But I wouldn't be surprised if he wins a decision, and a pretty dominant decision. In fact, I'm going to scrap. I think TJ gets a late stoppage. I think it's going to be 2-2 going into the fifth, and TJ gets a late TKO stoppage. I do. I think TJ gets controlled for a round or two, comes back, maybe drops Aljo, and wins a few rounds, gets his confidence back. 2-2 going into the fifth, gets the job done, gets the finish, and it will be a 3-time bantamweight champion. And you can't deny TJ isn't one of the best bantamweights of all time. You can't. His name is up there with Dominic Cruz. His name is up there with the upper echelon of the division. It's Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw. I know the EPOs. It tainted his legacy forever. But I'm just laying down the facts that this guy needs to have respect put on his name. And I think he could get it back by winning the belt back. Main event time. I'm excited. And a lot of people are pretty pissed off about this matchup, but I'm not. We could blame Khabib for this. As much as I hate him, I just have to speak the facts. We could blame him for this because over the past few years, Khabib has been saying, "Oh, Islam's the best. He's the better wrestler than me. He's the better striker than me. He's the best. Give him the belt. Give him the title shot." And then we have Josh Thompson saying the same thing. And then we got Daniel Cormier on his show saying the same thing. It's the media's fault. The media hyped up Islam Makhachev to the point where Dana just had to give him the title shot. They're like, all right, the outside, the media, they've convinced me to give this man a title shot. Let's see what he does. He came into the UFC at a good time. I think he's been in the UFC for about 7 years, I'd say. 6 years. And in those 6 years, normally you see fighters tend to climb up the ranks. Fight guys in the top 25, top 10, top 15, top 5. And then by the time they're in year 6, 7, they're fighting for a title. Islam did not do that. He fought bum. Title shot. I shouldn't say bum. He didn't fight guys that are ranked. Drew Dober, okay, you did what you're supposed to do. Dan Hooker, probably his most legit win. Dan Hooker took it on 3 weeks' notice. You mean to ask a guy to just step in on any fight 3 weeks' notice? I know it's been done. I know guys have won, but still, 3 weeks' notice. And Dan Hooker, I don't think he's ranked in the lightweight division anymore. He was meant to fight Beneil Dariush, who is on this card. Like I said earlier, he was meant to fight him, but Beneil had to pull out, sadly. And Islam took on Bobby Green, who just fought 2 weeks before that fight card and utterly dominated him. So he has not fought one ranked opponent his 6 years of being in the promotion, and this man gets a title shot. It's almost like boxing. It's almost like boxing where you stat pad the shit out of your record to the point where you're undeniable. And that's a good tactic. But when you have the ruthless media like MMA, you want to see guys fight tough top contenders. I mean, shoot, look at Paddy Pimblett. People want to see him already fight freaking Charles Oliveira. People want to see him fight Conor McGregor. People want to see him fight Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje. We hate the building up process that boxing has because in MMA, we get spoiled by getting the fights that we want. We all know boxing is their own shit show. They have to wait for certain clauses, certain rematch clauses, blah, blah, blah. That's why a whole YouTuber is carrying the whole entire sport of boxing. I could go on a different wormhole onto why boxing is dying, but I'll spare you all the time. My point is Khabib is hyping up Islam when he has fought nobody. Nada. He's fought dudes that clean the mat at your typical Planet Fitness. Charles Oliveira, on the other hand, has been in the UFC for 11 years and has done it the hard way. I think it took him something like 28, 25 fights for him just to get a title shot, very similar to Michael Bisping. And when he got that title shot, he did not squander it. He showed that he should be the champion. But let me just tell you, this guy beat Kevin Lee, Nick Lentz, calf slicer, first ever calf slicer submission in UFC history, Efren Escudero, Ultimate Fighter winner, Tony Ferguson, ever heard of him? He defeated monsters, Murderers Row, to get to where he is. He defeated Kevin Lee. We all know how tough Kevin Lee is. He defeated Michael Chandler to get the belt. Ever heard of him? Probably has knockout of the year locked up. He defeated Dustin Poirier. Ever heard of him? He defeated Justin Gaethje. Ever heard of him? And I doubted Charles Oliveira in that fight. I did not think he would win that fight. And I'm so happy he shut me up. And that just made me more of a fan of his than ever before. I remember Charles Oliveira's first few fights when he fought Frankie Edgar and could barely make 145. He lost to Anthony Pettis at 145. I mean, this guy has been through the ringer. He's been through adversity. He completely left behind the stigma that he is a quitter to people putting respect on his name. People are so high on this man, higher than your stoner on a Friday night listening to Kid Cudi. This guy is one of my favorite fighters, probably in my top 10 favorite fighters today. And I think he's going to go out there and shock the world again. Because we all know Khabib's fan base. And we all know Khabib says a lot of things that ruffles people's feathers. But a lot of the MMA media is blinded by it and just chooses to accept it for what it is. This is Charles' first fight since the Kevin Lee fight where he's not fighting a prolific striker. Because you look at Michael Chandler, he's a good striker. Tony Ferguson's a great striker. Justin Gaethje is a phenomenal striker. Dustin Poirier is a phenomenal striker. So this is probably Charles's first time since Kevin Lee where he's fighting a guy with not prolific striking. We all know what Islam's gonna do. He's basically another Khabib. He's gonna go in, throw a few strikes, make you think this is going to be a stand-up fight, and then take you down when you least expect it. Everyone knows what he's going to do. It's just a matter of stopping it. Unless you're Charles Oliveira, who has the most submission wins in UFC history. You do not want to be on the mat with this guy. You do not want this guy to get your arm. He's going to break it and take it back home to Brazil. You do not want this guy to get your neck, or he's going to choke you till your trachea breaks. You do not want this guy to get your leg, or he's going to rip it off and keep it on his keychain like that rabbit good luck charms that people kept in the 70s. This fight will show how big of a fool Khabib Nurmagomedov is. This fight will show just how good Charles Oliveira is. Charles Oliveira has the advantage everywhere. I do not see Charles losing. I bet on Charles last time. I'm not betting on him this time. Again, I do not see him losing. There's no way on God's green earth that Charles Oliveira loses this fight. He has the advantage on the ground. He has the advantage standing up. I would not be surprised if he knocks out Islam within 30 seconds because that man has power. When you drop Justin Gaethje, you have power. Now, if and when this fight goes to the ground, I'm not going to be totally naive and say this fight is not going to the ground because it is. Charles could submit him any way he wants. He'll probably create a new submission that we've never seen before. His jiu-jitsu is that high level. It's definitely the toughest fight of Islam's career. I don't think it's the toughest fight of Charles' career. The toughest fight he has is making the weight. Knock on wood, he's going to make it. I see Charles winning easy. Very easy. I see him winning similar to when he defeated Justin Gaethje. I believe Charles wins about a minute into the first. Charles will drop him. Charles will get his back and submit him. He'll submit him with the rear naked choke. He'll submit him with a guillotine. Nonetheless, he will get a submission victory. I do not see Islam tapping. I see him going to sleep. I see him going to sleep with his eyes wide open, close to having a seizure. I really do. His striking is better. I know the whole AKA team is saying that Islam's striking is better than Khabib's. Khabib doesn't have striking. He has the striking of a baby. Khabib has the striking not even of an amateur boxer. So you really think that Islam's striking is any better? I swear, the MMA media and MMA trainers and sparring partners are too nice and sometimes too naive. Like I said, Oliveira gets it done. He gets it done, and I cannot wait to clown Khabib's bitch ass after his boy loses. Because it's his fault. He's throwing him into the fire. Oliveira will win this fight. And Khabib will look like such a fool. It will be hilarious. Absolutely hilarious, because that guy won't know what he's talking about. And it will be probably the biggest hype train to fall from grace, probably in UFC history. Let me just run through my picks again one more time. O'Malley winning 3rd round TKO. Dillashaw winning 5th round TKO. And Oliveira winning 1st round submission. It's just going to be that simple. I need more subscribers, you guys. I need more subscribers because I drop knowledge that no one else drops. I know I'm the best at analyzing fights. I'm the best at predicting fights, especially here in Pueblo, Colorado. I helped get the MMA community, the UFC community, to this town. No one in this town would be watching UFC if it wasn't for me posting about it every day on social media. So you know what to do. As Aljamain Sterling once said.
What's up, everybody? Subscribe to Keep It 100 Podcast. Keep it lit.